Yeah, that was a moment for me, the VFW award. I got the Americanism award. And what you saw there for me, it shocked me also. I got choked up, teared up. I was trying to thank my mom. And what happened was all this stuff that you all have heard about my life growing up, it's at the surface. That shit's real, you know? And at that moment, it flashed through my head about the journey I had to go through to get to that point to do that. And along that journey, I feel, I figured out myself. And the biggest trophy I'll ever get in my entire life, like I turned down a book deal, which we'll talk about soon. The biggest trophy that I ever got in my entire life was me, was really figuring out me. And when I was up on that stage, I realized that. I realized it's not about money. It's not about fame. It's not about being accepted by your peers and everybody else. It's about figuring out who I am and being happy with who the fuck I am. Even though I'm going to be judged for all these things, being able to put a middle finger up to everybody and say, this is David Goggins. And to get to that point, it felt great. And that was all about, honestly, we have to give back. We have to be able to go through our journeys in life, figure out who we are, and help the person beside you. Figure that shit out. Figure out how they can do that themselves. As you know, I'm a serious introvert and very afraid of people. I got judged so much growing up that this is uncomfortable for me. All these podcasts, that's why I post once a week.
Yeah.
I don't, people are ugly, people are nasty. They make me want to choke the shit out of them. And they're just nasty people. So I stay away from them. But the one thing I realized why I wrote the book is, honestly, I have a story to tell, as we all have a story to tell. And what I realized on my journey was a lot of us don't believe that we can achieve the impossible. And along my journey, I started realizing, man, I gotta fucking tell some people about this shit, man. Like, I discovered something that some people have, but they don't even fucking know. All of us have it. But along this way, I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't a theorist. I became a practitioner. And I was like, my God, I'm busting down so many barriers of, like, I have a learning disability. Okay, but I'm catching up with everybody. I figured that out. I figured out all these negative things in my life that were keeping me in this hole. I'm like, I gotta tell people, man, that, hang on a second, man. You can fucking achieve the absolute impossible. You don't need great parents. You don't need like a private school. You don't need to have this humongous GPA and all this other shit. What you need is the one thing I talked about in my book, which is straight up brutal work ethic. You have to be willing to outwork everybody in the world. And that's the hard part. That's the hard part. This isn't like some 5-step process where if you do these 5 fucking steps, you're gonna end up with this magical world. No, I'm basically teaching you how to callous over your victim's mentality. I'm teaching you how to, like I did 67,000 pull-ups in training for the pull-up record. I was seriously callousing my hands to protect them. What I'm trying to do with people is teach them how to find more of themselves to where they empower themselves. I'm all about the underdog. So that's what the book's all about, man. It's all about having that step process, and I had to share this with people.
Well, I also feel, and personally struggling with social anxiety and introversion myself, the hardest part of all of it is being vulnerable enough to admit the abuse, admit the past. Most of us don't want other people to know that, and that's right. The hardest part, to open up and be that vulnerable.
Right.
When did that start to bubble to the surface for you and you start to see vulnerability as a strength?
Well, where it started making me, I had to stop giving a fuck about people. That was the biggest thing. I had to stop caring what people thought about me. I realized that everybody's fucked up. That's the one thing I realized. I walked around and I put these people on a fucking pedestal. Everybody was better than me. So I can't tell you anything about me because you're gonna judge me and I'm gonna feel even worse than what I am. What I realized, once I calmed my mind down and sat back and looked at how jacked up this world is, once you realize that you are not alone, everybody that's talking to you about how jacked up you are, only thing they've done better than you is they've hidden their fucked up world better than you have. That's all they've done. So once I realized that, if you want to sit back, like for instance, there's all these things that are on TV, and we have all these news people judging people who fuck up in life. And yeah, they made big mistakes. But that person who is judging you on TV, I guarantee you that news person is saying, I'm glad that my shit didn't come out, but I'm going to judge the hell out of you. I know that about people. So if you want to sit back and judge how jacked up I was and how messed up my life was, Merry Christmas, go for it. Have a good time. But I'm smiling at you right now, knowing you have a secret that you're not willing to share. It gives you a lot of power when you're able to go on a podcast this big and say, hey, tell me, I'll tell you anything you want to know. I no longer care. And that is a lot of power in that, to be able to put your life on a billboard for the whole world to see and say, judge it, man. Judge it. Like just me talking about it makes me feel good. And that's another thing about it. When you are willing to talk about how jacked up you are, the strength, that big rock that you carry, it just starts to come off you. It just starts to come off. That's why I do it so often. I'm like, hey man, I'll tell you anything you want to know. I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of not telling you shit. I'm tired of lying about how good I'm not. You know, the motivation when people are losing, all these people who come out here and talk about how great they are, and I see it all the time, it makes me sick, man. Get real with yourself. People cannot relate to you, man. You are unfucking relatable when you come out here and say, hey man, I'm the baddest motherfucker to ever live. Okay, great. Well, what am I gonna learn from you? You learn from people who are willing to tell you, this is where I started from. This is how much I fell on my fucking ass. This is how bad I used to really be. I still have those moments, because why? You're human. We're all jacked up, man. We're all jacked up. And that's what makes my story relatable. I'm willing to let you in to see I'm decently successful now. But I didn't come out like this, man. I didn't come out. That's the story, is you have to give people just a little bit of hope. There's no hope when they just see greatness in you everywhere. You have to be able to get yourself down to a level of check it out, man. There's hope for you. That's all I'm trying to give you. Just a little bit. Well, I thought it was my third hell week that I went through. When I got through with that first 100-mile race that I did around that 1 mile track that I didn't prepare for, and I was considerably, it was horrible. And I'll never forget, I found such peace and beauty. And I got there, I was in the worst pain of my fucking life. And I got done, and my wife pulled the car up on my ex-wife, pulled the car up on this little lawn, and I got in the back of it. And I got up the stairs. I'm not gonna go through the whole story, but I remember laying in the tub, and she put the shower on me, and I ran 101 miles in like 19 hours, and I was like peeing dirt out of me. And I'm sitting there, and I'm jackhammering, and my body is just the most broken it's ever been, even to this day. And this feeling came over me. Call it crazy if you want, but very few people, I guarantee, have ever felt this before, to push themselves so far outside of what they thought was even possible, even for me. I laid in that tub, and I didn't want it to go away. I had drained myself of every bit of strength, energy I had, and it was the best feeling I had in my life. All that pain, it was confirmation. It was confirmation that I had gone through a crucible, and I had figured out another level of David Goggins, a level that I thought was humanly impossible for anybody to do. When I was at mile 70 and shit and pissed all over myself, and I had 30 more miles to go, and I was damn near dead, and I was able to go 31 more miles. In that process of the next 31 more miles, I found out more about myself in that 31 miles than I ever have in my entire life. The conversations, the mental blocks, the roadblocks, everything horrible. It was just feeding at me like light speed. Get the fuck out of here, man. But I was able to figure out different tactics. And when I finally got done with that, and I laid in that tub and it was over, the feeling of, my God, man, you just really discovered a whole new world, a whole new part of the brain that I guarantee very few people have. So it's a feeling I can't even describe. Well, on that thing right there, it didn't do much for me. So the book Living with the Seal, My name wasn't in it, and I didn't even know really. I knew it was being written, but I had nothing to do with the book.
Right.
So all that came to me much later. But yeah, well, I sat back and I had the top 5 people come at me, top 5 publishing houses, and it was down to the last 2, and they're offering $300,000. I'm a first time author, and I decided to go with one of them. And $300,000 for a guy like me, I'm sitting back, that's pretty good money. So a few days before I was going to sign the contract, I sat back, talked to my fiance, my family, and everybody's like, hey, this is good, this is great, whatever. But I started thinking about my life. I started thinking about everything that I've gone through in my life, everything I had gone through, and I had a chance to reflect. And that's one thing I never did in my life for long enough, is have time to reflect. I was always, what's next? What's next? What's next? What's next? What's next? Now that I'm retired, and you have a lot of time to look back on what you've done, where you started, where you're at now. And I said, you know what? This shit's not for sale. $300,000 isn't even a fraction of enough money to sell this. So I decided not to sign it, and I self-published. I pissed a lot of people off.
I bet.
And I said, I'm not signing this. I'm going to self-publish. And that's kind of how it came to be. I took that time to reflect, and I'd rather not make a fucking dime. I read this book, and that's honest to God's truth. I am fine with the trophy I have in my mind.